In this video, we're talking about intermittent fasting.
Welcome to the Liz and Skatz channel.
Hi, I'm Liz Scattergood and I'm a clinical holistic therapist.
And I'm Skatz. I'm a musician and music therapist with type 2 diabetes. Help yourselves to what we're learning by doing this. Subscribe, and click on the bell.
Hello everybody!
Hello everybody! So, intermittent fasting. Is it all about starving yourself? Is it safe?
I've been looking forward to this video a great deal because it's how I started off. So this is the first thing that I researched and learnt about before anything else came into the picture, so I'm really looking forward to this. So the question is, what is intermittent fasting? Very, very simply, it's eating in a smaller window than you would be eating in normally. So for example, you get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, have breakfast around about 8, then you might finish eating in the evening. What time would you put your fork down and take your dishes to the sink? That is your window of eating.
And you could even have some supper later on. You might have some popcorn while you're watching a film. So you could be eating for 14 hours.
Yeah. In America, for example, the average eating window currently is 14 hours, which is quite a long time. So let's start by asking a few questions.
So here's a good question. How do we do it?
So what we need to be doing is shortening your eating window, the time in which you eat. Now that doesn't mean that you are continuously eating for the entire time.
Yeah.
It just means that when you start your breakfast to when you finish your dinner. For example, right now we have just fasted since yesterday evening at 6 o'clock and we didn't eat anything until about 2 o'clock this afternoon. Now that's really quite advanced. We don't suggest that you go bowling into 20-hour fasting because that's not a good idea. The way to start is to just start with a simple 12 hours, wouldn't you say? 12 hours is a good way to start. Especially if you've been
eating for 14, then take it gradually.
Watch for a few days perhaps to start off with. See how long a window you've got, when you finish eating in the evening, when you start eating again in the morning, and then work on shortening it down.
Remove the supper maybe to start with.
Yes, or just eat a little bit later in the morning. Perhaps you might wait until sort of 10, 11 o'clock before you have anything to eat and then see how you get on from there. So that's how we start.
Okay, so what's the next stage?
So the next stage after you've kind of shortened your window down is where should you be? Is there a specific time or a specific window that suits you? Now this again is very personal. I find quite at the moment that the 20-hour fast suits me beautifully. I'm very happy in that time.
It could be about your working hours.
Yes.
Depends on your job, what fits in best with your daily routine.
Yeah, maybe you've got kids or whatever. You need to slot it into your own time frame because we're all different obviously, so we've got to make sure that it's in the right time frame. The ideal to start off with, which is where you would be properly intermittent fasting, is 16-hour fast and an 8-hour window. It's called 16-8.
And it's really only once you're up to that level that you're properly into intermittent fasting and getting the results.
Yeah, which we'll talk about later. You can move your 16-8 from time to time. You don't have to be rigid on the time for that. Just as long as you get your 16 hours of fasting in, and it is quite flexible.
So where do you go next?
So once you've kind of established yourself, you may feel that 16-8 is fabulous for you. Just do what you need to do, and if you're happy there, then that's perfectly fine, isn't it? I mean, everybody is different. I, for example, found that 16-8 was too short a time of fasting. I wanted to fast for longer because the weight wasn't coming off, so I decided to shift my fasting time so that I had a longer fasting time. So I went up to 18-6 after that, and that for me worked much better. So my first feed was my first feed sounds like I'm a horse. My first meal was at 12, and then I would finish eating by 6 again. We kind of like finishing eating by 6, don't we?
If you've got a job where lunchtime is 12, you'd normally grab a sandwich or whatever you'd have at lunchtime, and then you'd have your evening meal just before 6. That one suits a lot of people.
There's a multitude of ways of doing it, and it's really, really very, very flexible and handy thing to do. 18-6 I started on then, and then I plateaued. My weight just stayed the same, or went up a little bit and came down a little bit, and just basically stayed along the same. It was 175. I will never ever forget that number. 175. I went up and down, all over the place.
Pounds, by the way, not kilos.
Yes. Excellent. Yes, it wasn't kilos. So then what happened was I decided that something needed to change, and that's when I decided to change to 19 or 20 hour fasts, and ever since then, oh my goodness, I've started feeling better. My digestive issues have disappeared because I had a few digestive issues, and then and everything just seemed to start working again, and the pounds are just coming off nice and steady and slowly like they should again, which is fantastic. The ultimate in fasting is when you go down to what is called OMAD. Or 1 meal a day. This is basically 23 or 24 hour fasting every day. So you just put all of your nutrients into 1 meal a day.
I did that yesterday and the day before. That was, in fact, the day before yesterday was my first try, and I felt really good the day after.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And the food, oh my God.
Oh yeah, your first meal after you've gone for nearly 24 hours.
It tastes spectacular. So one thing we did want to mention was that when you break your fast, during your window, however long it may be, please make sure that you eat naturally, healthily, whatever it is you're eating. Doesn't matter if you're like us and you're doing keto or you're still eating complex carbohydrates, please eat healthily, organic where you can. Try and get locally grown fruit and vegetables, or grow your own because it's cheaper. And this is a really good way to break your fast.
It does help to eat low carb. I mean, being on keto and fasting is really helpful because there's something to do with controlling your appetite.
Yes.
And that answers the question about, do you get really hungry?
Yes, it is one of the biggest questions. Aren't you hungry? Aren't you starving? And I would say that initially it's very difficult, but this is why we're telling you the best way to do it is to start with 12 and then creep it up maybe to 13 and 14 and 15 until you're there.
Your body gets used to it.
It does. Your body gets used to it, and your body figures it out. We tend to think of our bodies as not being very intelligent, but they really are. I mean, the body works around you. It works around what you need. Intermittent fasting is quite an easy thing to get into, but we have to remember that the body does take time to adjust to things. So taking your time, stay at 12 for a while, then a couple of weeks later change to 14. It's nice to go up in 2-hour increments.
So, fasting. Whoa, 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 whoa. What is it good for? It's not nothing.
The first benefit, fat burning. Woo, that's what we're all after.
We have been burning 43, nearly 44 pounds I've lost so far.
Yeah, and I'm at 24 pounds now, so between the two of us we're just like burning fat like nobody's business. I dread to think what that actually looks like. Anyway,
I have imagined that. Yes.
Indeed,
I mean, I've still got some there. I know what that looks like.
Yeah,
but that's so much. It was out here.
I know.
It would almost be touching the camera.
Not quite that bad.
Not quite that.
So fat burning, at around about 14 hours of fasting, you have used up all of the excess glucose in your blood and the glycogen in your liver.
Yes.
This is where your body starts searching for something else to eat, because it's still doing stuff. So what does it do? It searches for, and the other alternative, fat. So this is where we start burning fat at around 14 hours of fasting. It's different for everybody, but this is around about the average 14 hours.
Depends how much glucose you've thrown into your body, because obviously if you feed your face every time you're in your 8 hours with loads of sugar, then it's going to stay in your system longer, and especially if you're diabetic.
That's right. So we have to be really careful of that too. But yeah, the fat burning starts about 14 hours, and obviously the longer you're fasting, your fat burning increases until you're at maximum fat burning, which is basically at around about 20-21 hours. We're getting up to that 21 hours now every single day, and I can't tell you how great it feels. It does feel good. When we're burning fat instead of glucose, it's a much steadier burn, if you like. It's a bit like chucking paper on a fire. That's your glucose. That's how quickly it's gone.
Like rocket fuel.
Yeah. But if you put a big bit of coal on a fire, sorry eco warriors, but if you put a big bit of coal on, yes, it will last for ages, and it will keep you warm and keep you going for a long time.
So much more efficient.
Yes, much more efficient. So the longer you fast, the more fat you're going to burn, and the more good at it you get as well. And then eventually we become fat adapted.
Fat adapted, yes, that's the aim. And I think we're mostly fat adapted now, aren't we?
Mostly.
It can take 10 to 12 weeks before you get totally 100% fat adapted.
But of course we are talking about if you're doing a ketogenic diet as well, because if you're still eating carbohydrates you will not become fat adapted.
Not completely, no.
So that's something to remember too.
Well now, what about insulin?
Insulin, you have too much of that.
Yeah.
So do I think. I think most people who eat quite a few carbohydrates or have been eating a lot of carbohydrates over their lives have got too much insulin in their blood.
Yeah, don't realise it.
No.
Until you become pre-diabetic or diabetic and your doctor notices. And in the UK and in Ireland they don't measure your insulin levels when they take a blood test. They measure your glucose.
Yeah.
And what we don't realise is that actually it's the insulin we should be measuring, because that gets higher and higher and higher and higher, and it's not until the glucose goes over a certain amount that they say, you're pre-diabetic and now you're diabetic. But actually you were probably pre-diabetic a long time before, because the insulin was too high, and it was just at that point where it couldn't cope anymore with the amount of glucose that needed to be processed.
Yeah. So this process is actually called insulin resistance, which is basically where the cells go into lockdown. So they refuse to accept any more glucose. The glucose is just floating about in the blood. There's too much glucose, baby. So what happens when there's too much glucose? Insulin comes out. So we have too much insulin, too much glucose. Insulin is a fat storing hormone, and what it uses for its building blocks is glucose. So if you've got a lot of glucose floating around in your body and you've got a lot of insulin floating around in your body, the insulin is going to grab hold of that glucose and turn it into fat. And where is the first place that the fat settles in the body?
Around the organs.
Yes. Visceral fat around the internal organs.
That's not this stuff, it's the stuff inside all of that stuff around the organs.
You get this stuff. Sorry, my darling. You get this stuff.
It'll be gone soon.
You get this stuff once there's too much fat around your organs. So that is a really good sign to tell if you have some visceral fat. Then it's time to start re-evaluating things, because the visceral fat is really scary. It's the stuff that scared me the most. It scared me into going on a diet and doing something about my health. The fat around the liver, for example, and the kidneys can be very damaging to your health. It stops them working properly. And so
those are the organs that get rid of all of the bad stuff.
Yeah, all the toxins, everything goes through the kidneys and the liver, and unfortunately we are scuppered without a liver. And fatty liver syndrome happens with too much alcohol, but it also happens with too much carbohydrates as well. The liver gets fatty and we can end up going into cirrhosis if it gets bad enough. So this was something, I read that and I just went, ugh, and thought, what can I do about this?
People around my age were dying around me, and I thought, this is...
Yes.
And they looked the same as I did.
Yeah.
In terms of how much belly fat they had, and that just made me think, it's about time now.
It's scary, isn't it?
Do something.
Yeah. Of course, the earlier we can do this in our lives, the better.
Start when you won. No. So what about insulin? What happens to that while we're fasting?
Insulin is reducing because we will have been using it up by either storing the glucose as fat, and because no glucose is going into the body anymore, because we're not eating anything, no need for insulin. So it dissipates in the bloodstream. We don't have so much insulin in the blood anymore. So that means
that's much better.
Much better for us. So then, over time, this is what we've been learning. Over time, for people like Skatz, who's type 2 diabetic, the idea is that over a large amount of time we should be able to reverse his insulin resistance. If we can do that, then we have got rid of his type 2 diabetes. It does take time, but this is what we can do with intermittent fasting. So it's a very, very handy tool. And of course, the longer we fast, the lower the insulin levels get, and we go into the next phase.
And I've been measuring my blood glucose. I've got one of the little blood glucose measuring machines, and every so often I've taken a reading and I've gone down from 6.7 down to 6, the one that I took this morning, and that's over a period of a month and a half since I got the machine. And that's kind of my fasting reading in the morning. Now that's not an indication of my A1C. It says in the booklet, don't take this as a measure of whether you're diabetic or not.
No.
So I'll have to stress that. It's giving a good idea of what level I'm reaching in terms of sorting out my insulin and the glucose in my blood. It's a good idea to do it early in the morning so you can get a good idea of what's happened overnight, how well your body is coping and how well it's recovering. And so I'm repairing. Okay, and how does it help the digestive system?
If you can imagine your poor little digestive system, it's so sad, I feel quite sorry for it. I know. We can often start eating as early in the day as 7 o'clock in the morning. Some people it's even earlier. Comment down below, tell us what your normal eating hours are, what your window is. I'd love to hear this. It'd be great for our research and stuff. So what we have to imagine is that every time you eat something, our insulin levels go up, whether it's fat or protein or whether it's carbohydrate. You notice I went up for each one. Fat releases the least amount of insulin, protein is the next one up, and then carbohydrates is head and shoulders over the top of everything else. So if you're having breakfast cereal or toast or pancakes or waffles in the morning, your insulin is going to go way up. So that means your pancreas is working really hard. Then what happens? It goes into the stomach. You produce stomach acid, it then goes into the small intestine, that has to extract the nutrients, then it goes into the large intestine, peristalsis, pushing everything down, and you are extracting nutrients all along the way. In the meantime, your liver and your kidneys are getting rid of the toxins out of the food that you've eaten at the same time. So it's basically a factory, a very, very busy factory of stuff happening.
If you're eating 7 or 8 times a day, that you're throwing so much more work on everything.
So, when we're fasting, we're basically saying, hey guys, take a chill.
Take a break.
Take a break.
We'll have a cup of coffee.
When this starts to happen, our bodies just take a rest, the liver relaxes, the kidneys relax. This is why on an intermittent fasting and keto diet, our kidneys start to work much better, your liver starts to work much better. You will find that your stomach feels better. A lot of people who have digestive issues like indigestion, heartburn, things like that, they'll find that that gets much better very quickly on an intermittent fasting. You're giving yourself a break, rest the body. We know about resting. Resting is good for us, sleep is good for us. We repair during sleep. We're also fasting during sleep. This is another reason why, you know, just extending that time is a rest for the body. Very, very good idea.
And fasting is a lot to do with repairing.
Autophagy, there's a word.
Autophagy. It's got nothing to do with toffee.
No.
So don't get hungry.
It's my favourite word right now. It's something that I'm looking up very, very often. It's something that a great many doctors, the Lancet medical journals, they're all talking about autophagy. What happens when we get past that really long fasting time? So around about I think it's 19 hours when autophagy kicks in, we get a burst of human growth hormone. Now this, along with
great stuff,
oh my goodness, it starts repairing dead cells in the body, especially in the bowel and the gut, are eliminated, and we basically start removing all of the toxins that are deep in our bodies that we don't usually give ourselves time to get rid of. This is why autophagy is fantastic. This is why when we do a 24-hour that you were talking about, we feel fantastic afterwards because it's like clean. It's brilliant.
And you're also repairing the walls of your mitochondria.
Yes.
And it's when the walls of the mitochondria break down, that's when you can feel the keto flu kind of feeling as well.
This is a microcellular cleansing we're talking about here, so it's absolutely vital that we give this to our bodies every now and again. You talk to anybody who goes on a water fast for a day or something like that and they'll feel how wonderful they feel the day after. The human growth hormone actually is anti-aging. It's anti-aging.
Oh, so many benefits, and that's one of them, yeah.
Woo! So,
my skin looks lovely.
I know.
So I was told by somebody from Dublin today. So my beauty regimen.
Yeah, so this is the beauty of autophagy. There are so many more facets to autophagy. I don't want to go into that too much. We maybe just do a whole video on autophagy, because I could.
And mitophagy.
And mitophagy.
That's the mitochondria bit. Yeah, another nice word.
So we're really getting into all of this studying and stuff, so it's brilliant. That's basically all we wanted to tell you for today.
Did we answer the question? Is it safe? Yes.
Yes, it is. In
Do
fact,
some research yourself and find out.
Absolutely.
It's definitely safe.
It is safe. Because
as long as you eat the nutrients when you are actually eating that you need.
Yes.
It's very important. Eat your greens.
Yes.
I keep saying it.
Yes, so it is safe. It's not starving yourself. You're just having your meals at a different time and in a shorter window. And we are looking after ourselves, so, and we feel great. Just getting rid of all the crud out your body. I like that idea.
So to round off, fasting is brilliant.
Yeah.
Intermittent fasting is great.
Yeah.
We like to do it with keto.
Yes. For the best benefits, you will find that if you link intermittent fasting and keto together, then you will get some amazing results, as we have. Some people are always saying, don't you feel hungry? So, well, we did until we started doing keto. So
there's still a bit of hunger, but it's not the gnawing hunger that you get when you're eating carbs all the time.
That's right.
You don't get that gripped stomach. And you get a bit of hunger and you have a drink of water. And that's
a really good tip.
That's okay. And you don't get that dip in energy that you get.
In another video that I'm hoping that we're going to do fairly soon is what actually breaks a fast. What foods, what drinks break a fast. We need to talk about that too, so we'll do that.
Okay, so that's all for today. We'll see you on the next video. Make sure you put your comments below and subscribe and click on the little bell. Ding, there it is. And yeah.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, enjoy.
Bye.